Welcome to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger of bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of Workology.
Did you know that people who focus on their strengths every day are nearly 6 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs and more than 3 times more likely to say they have an excellent quality of life? Nearly 15 years ago, Gallup introduced the world to the original StrengthsFinder. It's an assessment tool to help people discover their strengths. Since that time, more than 12 million people have benefited from this powerful method of personal and professional evaluation. Welcome to the Workology podcast. Thank you for making us part of your week. Today's topic is using StrengthsFinder in your workplace. Our guest today is Rhonda Boyle. She's the founder of Strengths Associates, LLC, a consulting company that uses the StrengthsFinder 2.0 methodology. She has a popular StrengthsFinder blog at activateyourstrengths.com. Rhonda has helped so many professionals learn how to leverage their unique gifts and raw talents to achieve personal and professional success, to really find your life's purpose. Welcome, Rhonda, to the Workology podcast.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm excited to be here.
Is there anything out of that intro that we left out that you wanted to maybe add on to?
No, I love it.
Awesome. Well, let's get right down to StrengthsFinder, because I think this is an interesting topic. I have been through your StrengthsFinder intensive, or your Activate Your Strengths intensive, and it is different than other training or classes. I like your guys' perspective. So let's just dive right in.
Okay.
Talk to us about strengths and a little bit about the StrengthsFinder 2.0.
Well, Gallup Corporation owns the test, as you know, and it's over 50 years in development. And what they have discerned is that there are 34 talent clusters, which are really just behaviors. They're patterns of behaviors, patterns of behavior, thoughts, and feelings that people have. And it's very accurate. It's mind-blowing the way how accurate it is. When people get their results, they're really excited and they see themselves. And so, we use this tool in order to help people, find out what they want and how they best operate and for success. So it's pretty exciting work.
And so how has this assessment tool helped over 12 million people? That's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people, and I would have to say that it hasn't yet, because a lot of people take the test, but then they don't do anything with it. They don't know how to apply it. And what we like to say is that the test is really like a hammer, wood, and nails. And then what are you going to build with it? Do you want to build a better job? Do you want to tweak your job, or you want to change jobs? Do you want to build a better relationship? You can actually use the tool all across the whole of your life. I know today we're focusing on job performance, but really you can use it to enhance your life in a multitude of ways. So that's what we do. We teach application. And I think that that's something that hasn't quite been developed fully out in the marketplace.
I agree with you. And I went through the StrengthsFinder training, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years ago, and actually even taught the book as part of a workshop for employees at the organization where I was working. But I will say that I've never quite applied it in the way that I have after taking your guys' intensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting work when you actually learn the deeper meaning of each talent, because every talent has a specific need. And, the truth is, Jessica, we're all running around trying to get our needs met. I mean, that's what we do in life. That's just who we are. And so when you really understand the needs of each talent and then accept responsibility for, getting those needs met, then, you can really effectively change and develop yourself personally and professionally. For example, I have the talent of communication. So what that means is that I need an audience. I need to be heard. So in the workplace, I'm really good good at presenting information and standing in front of a crowd. I like to be in the front of the room. And so presentations are easy for me. At home, when I'm communicating with, say, my husband and he's not listening to me, I might get a little louder and talk a little faster just because I'm trying to get that need met. And so you can imagine that for me, being locked up in a cubicle would be a disaster in the workplace.
And I think that's important for the individual to understand, but also supervisors and team members when we're talking about the larger organization.
That's right, exactly. Because it really helps you identify where conflict comes from too in the workplace. Like why are certain employees not thriving and not growing and developing? Well, it could very well be a mismatch in their job function. Why are two departments not getting along? Well, it's because their come from is completely different. And no matter what, you can never get away from looking out of your own eyeballs, which is really your perspective. It's part of who you are. And if we have different perspectives, then it makes it hard to, unless we understand the perspective of the other person, it makes it harder to get along in the workplace. So we have found it a very effective tool in teaching conflict resolution and communication, better communication.
Which are so key to be able to talk with people and get along with people and work together, which is, what happens when you're at work.
Right, exactly.
Why do you think typical training and development programs, maybe in a corporate setting, are challenging? And how can StrengthsFinder help maybe HR deal more with these type of challenges?
Well, I think that employees, they see training come and go. I think they're skeptical at the end of the day. It's like, oh my gosh, here comes another training or another change. They're wondering how it's going to affect them. Is my job still safe? And that they've got all of those kinds of thoughts running through their heads. And I think that also some of the training that comes down the pipe is not it can't be used by the actual employee that, because we're all talented differently, we have different gifts and talents. What some training, a training template might work well for some people, some employees, it may not work for everybody. And so, the director is scratching their heads going, why didn't that work? When it could very well be, again, a mismatch between the training and the employee, because it doesn't, again, it goes back to those talents and those needs. It doesn't meet the employee's needs, and it's not coming from their perspective. So they don't even understand and process it. So again, by creating a strengths-based environment for training and development, the directors are better able to match certain trainings, to certain departments or certain employees and so forth. And they have a better chance of success if they can approach it from a strengths-based application.
Let's think about this. We've taken the training, or we've read the book, and we know what our top 34 are and the order that they're in. How do we keep that momentum going once the training and the assessment are complete? How do we make sure that we're continuing to grow and develop and learn using these StrengthsFinder methodologies?
Well, you really have an opportunity here to develop a common language between your people, your management, inter departments, or cross departments. When everybody is adopting the same words because certain words mean certain things, then it makes it easier to communicate. And so I think that by really using that's the first step. Let's just say that's the very first step is working on that common language. And so that means that when you're working with employees in setting goals, for example, you make sure that their goals are set according to how they're gifted, right? How they're talented. And so that's one way. When you're in, staff meetings and so forth, you can start doing trainings, just very short, brief training on improving that language and that understanding of one another. You can also make sure that employees who work together well understand one another's talents, not just their own, but the person that they're working closely with and what they need so that they're better able to anticipate what they're going to need and so forth. So let me give you an example of that. My partner, as you well know, is completely different from me. And so he's very analytical. He needs data. He likes to analyze things before we make decisions and so forth. So it's incumbent upon me, because I understand his need and his talents, to give him and provide him the data, instead of just saying, hey, let's go and make this change. He's not going to be willing to change unless he has the data, complete information, and unless he has the time to analyze it. So being respectful of him and his talent allows us to make better decisions together because we understand one another.
It just makes working together better, and the conversations, the communication, like better understanding of one another. So you're anticipating maybe something that Lee, your business partner, is needing, and you can provide that in advance. So there are no bottlenecks and maybe less stress or confrontations.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk a little bit about coaching for a minute, because I know part of what you guys do is that you provide the training and the intensive and all this great information about how to apply StrengthsFinder in the real world, professional and personal. And life coaches, there seem to be them sprouting up a little bit everywhere. And I know that you guys offer life coaching. So maybe talk about what makes your coaching unique, and how does it help maybe move or continue to move that person forward in the sort of StrengthsFinder methodologies?
Well, our coaching is different, I guess, from a typical life coach because we do focus specifically on a person's talents and strengths. So we are able to help them identify, what they want based upon how they're talented, and then we're able to help them understand triggers, things that might frustrate them in the workplace. We're able to help guide them towards certain personal development to help them point in a direction of a new career path based on their talents and their interests, right? So it's not just talents. It's your talents are developed really based off of your belief system. And so it's really combining all of those things and taking a more holistic approach in helping move someone forward in their professional development. So studies have shown that when you have personal one-on-one coaching, you can really enculturate and adopt, using these talents more to your advantage. I think the coaching aspect is one that's often overlooked, and because you're working on soft skills, so there's not necessarily a number attached to it at the bottom line, and so people don't recognize the value and how important it can be for that development.
We have had a previous guest on the podcast, episode 26, with Donna Miller, and she talked about strategic HR. But one of the things about Donna is that she's an executive coach, and I think that when you're at a certain level and you, or in your business or personally, professionally, you understand, or hopefully understand, that you're going to need an expert to kind of help move you or continue the momentum in a certain direction, and that a effective life coach can help you do that, especially if you're on the fast track or you're a high potential within your organization. The further that you develop and the faster that you develop, the more likely that you'll move on to your next promotion or professional opportunity.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point. In StrengthsFinder, the results of the test and really understanding those talents, those needs, those triggers, and those types of things, it can really push that process forward much, much faster.
This is all very exciting, and we're going to take a little bit of a reset here. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast powered by Blogging for Jobs. Today's topic is using StrengthsFinder in your workplace. Maybe you've heard of StrengthsFinder, or you've taken the test yourself. I was just looking at my top 5, which I'll share. My number 1 is Activator. Then I have an Input. My 3 is strategic, 4 is learner, and my 5th is ideation. You can learn all about the 34 attributes and strengths and what those mean by going to Rhonda's website, which is just activateyourstrengths.com. And certainly you can connect with her and her business partner, Lee, there as well. Let's get back to StrengthsFinder. Let's talk a little bit about the strengths. I mentioned my top 5. Is it possible to change your strengths or develop new ones?
Well, typically not. You actually were born with all 34 of the talents that Gallup has identified in their StrengthsFinder assessment. But over your lifetime, and really by the time you were a late teen, you became dominant in the ones that you just mentioned. And so all of your life, your professional development, your personal development, and so forth, you've just done nothing but get stronger and stronger and stronger as an activator and as a learner and in your strategic, intuitive way of approaching problems, because that's the way you view the world. It really does set your perspective. Now, that said, can you pull talents up from the bottom? You can, but it takes great effort. So when we're talking about your natural talents or your top 5 or really your top 10, when we're talking about your top 10 talents, these are talents that you use without effort and mostly in a positive way if you're getting those needs met. And it becomes your wheelhouse, if you will. And so these are the ones you are going to naturally go to. They're your first go-to. But when you need to get things done and it's not a natural fit, then you're going to obviously pull something up from the bottom of, the barrel, so to speak. But it will drain your energy and it'll take you more time and more effort. So, for example, I do not have high analytical. Analytical is number 31 for me, Jessica. So if you stick a spreadsheet under my nose, I'm probably going to have a panic attack. So really, I do not read spreadsheets very often. I hand those to my partner because he is analytical number 2. It's in his top 5. So you can see where if I had to, I would stop and it would be, I would, have to stop and it would take me longer to get it done. Can I get it done? Yes. Can I analyze a spreadsheet? Yes, but I avoid it at every opportunity. And chances are I'm never going to live in excellence at analyzing data. I'm just not. So that's really the approach that StrengthsFinder takes, is helping people develop and excel in those areas where they're already naturally gifted. And somewhere along the line of my life, I decided that analyzing numbers was not my thing. And so really that's kind of a long answer to your question.
No, I love it. And I think about, me, and we talked about this before we hit record for the podcast to get going here, is that my woo is number 25. Mm-hmm. And it is not my best attribute. However, I recognize that I'm not like a natural networker, but I am a natural learner. Like, I love to learn. And so doing this podcast, it takes advantage of the learning side and also allows me to connect and build relationships and learn more with other people, mm-hmm. which I recognize.
Right. But you do woo, right? You do use your woo. Woo stands for winning others over, and that happens to be my number 2 talent. But when you go, so you're totally capable of going to a networking event and networking with people. But when it's over, you have to go home and take a nap.
Agreed. Yes, I do. And conference season is upon us. So it is, it's like training for a marathon to go to one of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But for me, I live to go to networking events. I can't wait to go out. The need of a woo is to go out and meet new people every day, because we love that connection, that engagement that we get. And we need the energy, frankly, from the people that we meet.
I think you brought out a good point that while my woo is number 25, I still can pull my woo out occasionally to be able to use it personally and professionally. So these strengths, although they're lower on the list, it's my 25, it isn't necessarily a weakness because it's lower. I can lift it up when I need.
Exactly. In fact, I will tell you that your weaknesses actually come from your top talent, not your bottom ones. And this is a common misconception. Most people think that, for example, my analytical would be a weakness. Well, it is, but I don't use it. I make, as I mentioned before, I don't analyze spreadsheets or, gather data. And that's just an area that I don't play in. So analytical being low doesn't become a weakness unless I try to use it. Now, my top talents is where my weaknesses really come from. As I mentioned earlier, my communication, I have a need to be heard. So if I'm in a meeting, for example, and there are people whispering in the corner, that will trigger me because I'm not getting my need met. I'm not being heard. I don't feel heard in the meeting because they're being rude and disrespectful. And I'm wondering, my mind starts racing. What are they talking about? Do they not like what I'm saying? And so I'm not as effective because I've been triggered into a weakness. Does that make sense and how that works?
Absolutely. I mean, I think about ideation. For me, it's a great thing because I can come up with all sorts of great new ideas. I have a lot of creativity, but then again, it's a weakness because all I do sometimes is come up with ideas, and then I get really distracted because I have a million different new things coming at me and I can't focus on what I need to do.
Exactly. And another thing for your ideation that will trigger you is if people naysay your ideas. Like if you're sitting in a meeting and you've got all these ideas churning and you start popping them out very quickly, because people with ideation have like popcorn brain, like you say, we're just popping constantly with ideas, but not all of our ideas are good. And we know that. We know they're not all good, but if we can process them openly and freely, then we will come up with a great idea. But as soon as somebody, usually an analytical, starts analyzing our ideas on the spot and shooting them down like that won't work, well, we tried that before, then we get triggered and our ideation actually shuts off. It's sort of like we pick up our marbles and we go home.
We check out.
That's right.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about distinguishing between personal and professional. I think a lot of times we want to say it's one or the other, but with the Strengths Finder and your guys' philosophy, they're really intertwined. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, they are absolutely intertwined. And I think that, let's take, for example, my woo, which is, again, winning others over. It's my number 2 talent. So I woo all day long. I go to networking events and I want to woo. If I'm standing in the grocery store, my woo in communication is probably going to say, oh, how are you today? Or what a cute baby you have, or something. I'm going to interact and engage people no matter where it is, or where I am, rather. And so I think that is a missing link in the corporate environment, is that a lot of, people take the test and they don't recognize that these talents are used over the whole of their lives. They use the same talents in their workplace. They use the same talents at home. They use them in their faith community. They use them in their civic work. And so when you really understand that you use your talents every day in every way and everywhere you are, then you start to recognize, wow, I can tweak it over here, and then I can change this over there, and I can position myself more powerfully here, because that's where I'm naturally gifted. And it makes you, happier. You have it improves your well-being and your overall performance in every area of your life, not just at work.
I like to think about if we're investing in our employees, right, with a workplace training and looking at Strengths Finder and bringing you and Lee in for an intensive with the large organization. If that these employees that attend the training, they really get something out of it because they can see the use case for personal and professional. It's not one or the other. And I think they're more likely to apply it and then be able to use it going forward. It's more valuable.
Well, exactly. And we have a new workshop, actually, our MBQ, Managing by Quadrant. And in that workshop, we actually help the employees see how they contribute outside of work first. because when they can grasp how they're using their talents outside of work, then they're more likely to recognize and understand how they can more effectively contribute inside the workplace because they have a reference. They have an outside reference.
Let's talk a little bit about Gallagher. They're a case study of yours. Can you talk a little bit about some highlights and some big takeaways from the training program and the work that you've done with them?
I can. I'd love to. We have been working extensively with a specific branch here in the area, and they had already taken the StrengthsFinder assessment 2 years earlier, and they had taped everybody's top 5 on their door, and really that's all they had done. And so the operations director that we came in contact with, she was like, I love this stuff, but I can't figure out how to effectively use it. And so she came and did some of our personal work and then saw applications for the business. So the one of the first workshops that we did in there was on communication and conflict, and so we were able to show them, and they didn't have a lot of conflict, so I don't want to imply that, but we were able to show them where in certain departments they were having trouble, and exactly why the trouble came where it came from. It came from not understanding the other side's perspective, and once we were able to do that, we were able to help them improve their communication, and conflict lowered, and they made a few changes and switcheroos around with some of their people, and they were able to work more effectively. Now all of a sudden those door tags meant something. And so for example, when one department would go and knock on the door of another someone in another department, she knew that she had to have data, and she knew that it was going to take time for the person to analyze. So she was able to, sort of change her own habits to make it more effective and meet the needs of the person that she needed to interact with. So that was the first thing that we did with them. And then we went in with our managing by quadrant, our MBQ application, and we taught them how their people wanted to contribute. Because here's the reality, Jessica. I don't think there's anybody on earth who wants to go in and waste their time 9 to 5. They want to feel valued. They want to feel that what they're contributing means something to the company. I don't think if anybody's out there just doing a job that they hate, well, they're pretty miserable, wouldn't you say?
That's the biggest problem with productivity loss is disengagement in the workplace.
Exactly. And so we were able to show them exactly what it means to contribute, how the employees want to contribute. And then we developed after some of this training, we actually allowed them to put it in action. And in a very short order, in an afternoon, we created some teams, and they were able to learn the art of collaboration. They were able to learn how to brainstorm and ideate together to come up with ideas where they could actually contribute with a business focus to the company's bottom line. And in that afternoon, according to the director that we were working with, we were able to discover $1.5 million of revenue generating ideas that could be implemented within the next 12 months. It was amazing.
Wait a second. $1.5 million?
That's what I said. $1.5 million. And that was with only 5 big ideas that came from the teams involved.
Well, if that isn't a way to make a case for adding StrengthsFinder to your workplace and building those relationships and focusing on communication, collaboration, I don't know what is.
Exactly. So we're really excited at what we were able to come up with and how we were able to teach them that application.
Well, I want to thank you, Rhonda, for joining us today. Where can people go to learn more about you and what you do?
Well, they can find us at strengthsassociatesllc.com, or They can find us at activateyourstrengths.com. And we have a lot of resources available to help them. We have a blog that we write in extensively. And so they can learn more about each of the talents there, and they can learn more about us.
Awesome. Well, we will link to your article on professional development with StrengthsFinder. You can go to the transcript of this podcast over on bloggingforjobs.com, and just on the right-hand side, just put StrengthsFinder podcast, and you'll be able to be connected directly to Rhonda, all the great resources that we've talked about today. I want to thank Rhonda, as well as you, for joining us for the Workology podcast today, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, HR, and recruitment. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill. Until next time, you can visit Blogging for Jobs to listen to all our previous Workology podcast episodes.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by Total Picture Media.